G'day listeners and welcome back to another episode of the Keeper League podcast. With our AFL Fantasy podcast, it doesn't talk about the superstars. We only talk about the less knowns and the players who will bring value to your draft and Keeper League teams. My name's Heff and today I am joined by a returning guest, Jordan DeSena. How are you, mate?
Good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. How's your weekend? Go to the Port game. Didn't get to see you because you were playing a gig somewhere. You sent me a photo of Koshi before the game. What's the go there?
I did, yeah. So I went to the game, got to play there as well. A few ex-players, and yeah, Koshi was there, did a speech in the corporate room. So, but yeah, I mean, good atmosphere, and yeah, it's always nice to go to those games when the weather's a bit warmer and it's the first game of the season. So yeah, it was good.
Between half-time and three-quarter time, the sun was unbearable, I reckon. So, like, just not used to it for footy season. And then, lucky I put sunscreen on because I reckon I would have been sunburnt. Although it was a bit later in the day, but still, it was pretty hard work. I'm almost dead today, Geordie. I ran 30 Ks yesterday.
I saw it come up on Strava.
And it feels like every one of my limbs and every body part is about to just fall off of me and die. So, that's how I'm feeling right now. I'd rather be like hungover as shit than this sort, to be honest. It's a very, very bad feeling. But, only a few more long runs to go and then I can tick off a marathon that I've always wanted to do.
Pretty awesome achievement. I think,
I can never speak of it again. It'd be great.
Yeah. And is it now you just start like decelerating a bit on those Ks? Is that the biggest one?
I've got two more big runs
Yeah.
and then it's starting to taper, as they say. I'm just getting the body right for the big event in May. So, but I'm not feeling very well. So I'm going to whiz through this tonight and go to bed after this. But anyway, how's your Keeper League team going so far? Have you started the season?
Yes.
I know your brother is the reigning champ.
Yep.
But how are you going? You catching up on him?
Yes, well, he's had 2 wins and I've had 1 win and 1 loss. So I think I'm 4th at the moment. So I'm in the top 4, 1 point. So yeah, pretty happy. Hopefully, I got some players that have come back. I need Mills to come back and Treloar and these sort of types. So hopefully you can push up there.
Yeah. In our league, I think Keeper hasn't updated the scoring just yet. So I think there's a few just checks that need to be and issues that happen with the so many different leagues having different scoring rules that they would just have to be checked off. But I think when it opens up, I'm going to be sitting top by a fair way and Kays is going to be sitting bottom by a long way. So for, everything's just right in the world at the moment. Everything's in its right place. Everything's where it should be at the moment for the Keeper League community out there. But anyways,
that's especially from that going through the draft as well, the review of you and Kay. So yeah.
Well, we'll talk about the draft. There's bits and pieces in this podcast littered throughout. But anyway, we'll get stuck into it. We might just get straight into the round review so this podcast doesn't drag on forever. But we'll start with the Carlton versus Hawthorn game. Not a lot from a Carlton point of view, but we've got Jesse Motlop who had 87 points. Did have some midfield time, so that's probably one to watch. But I think it's probably a tip of the cap, don't you?
Yeah, this is actually his highest score ever. So, tip of the cap, I think. When you see a guy get 87 points, you think, oh, maybe he's kicked 4 or 5 goals. But he only kicked 1 goal, 3. So that is a pretty good sign. But did have a sprinkle of midfield time. But yeah, his highest score ever. So I think we need to see it a bit more before you I reckon, get him off the waivers.
Yeah, I agree too. I wouldn't be chasing that too hard just yet. And Jack Silvani, rest in peace, his defensive role. Back up 40. He actually probably looked like one of their better forwards.
Yes.
He's actually one of their best players at the moment, really.
I think, Kerno underdone and Mackay, when it was out with illness, they had to have a target up there. So just interesting when they're both back.
It might
Mackay and Kerno, hope to see what happens.
He might push back again. Like I said, he didn't score terribly as a forward. It's just that you want him probably just intercepting across half back instead of being the kind of key focal point up forward, which isn't going to be as fruitful for fantasy. Onto the Hawthorn boys. Josh Ward, you got to be pretty happy with that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Josh Ward. Had a bit more mid-time as well. So, I think he had 30%, which is good to see and actually looked really good, 101 points. I'm pretty happy with that. And then, you got Cam Mackenzie as well with the 82. I did notice that last week Cam Mackenzie had 70% CBAs.
Yeah.
This week he had about 30%. So
and
I feel like they
split it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're still scoring well, which is good. But they split it the time a bit more. So
yeah. Josh Ward, his role was more wing. Then I reckon Finn McGuinness went to the half back, and then I think they kind of rotated a bit there, but then kind of had about 3 or 4. No, I think he had like either 3 CBAs per quarter or something like that, and a few short ones. So yeah, there's a bit of rotation, which I feel like a lot of Hawthorn are doing in their midfield in all aspects. Like they'll have the inside midfielders push forward, wingers push to defence, and that sort of stuff as well. But probably not enough to see any meaningful position changes going forward, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and like Warple is like a couple of weeks away, I think, gather round.
Yeah.
And Connor McDonald had like another syndesmosis ankle as well.
Yeah.
So he'll be out for a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
so I just wonder what, like, I just would hate for Ward to go out of the side with these two performances.
I don't think he's going to.
And that's what I think. I think if he keeps doing this, like, I think they'll be able to find a spot for him, and they can shuffle it around a bit. So great to see.
Yeah, he's definitely performing well enough at the moment. All right, let's move on to the Footscray versus Collingwood game. We'll continue calling the Footscray. Actually, it sounds so much better calling it Footscray than Western Bulldogs, don't you reckon?
Oh, and all the history as well.
Yeah, absolutely. With Bob Murphy reading history book on the Oval. But anyway, Sam Darcy, I know you love this guy.
Yes.
Had 100 points. I'm of the opinion the role means he'll be a bit more inconsistent, but he'll score on occasions. But you kind of think he can kind of average quite a lot better than that, don't you?
I think he can go 80 this year. I think he's an awesome prospect. Like, he obviously kicked 4 goals, but like, he does chop out in the ruck a bit. I think he had 10 ruck contests or something. So there's a bit of time there. But, he's just one of these players. Like, you hear about the media as well. They're like, okay, if you had to pick one, you're taking Darcy, you're taking Dacos. Like, this is the talk that's been going around this week. I feel like he could be a generational player.
In real football terms, he's just such a unicorn.
Exactly.
The ball comes anywhere near him and he plucks it. And then just like little things, like there was like just a lead that he made and just kind of backed back quickly and just plucked it out of nowhere, and the defender had no idea where to go and what it was doing. It was it was incredible. Like, he is a talent. I just hope it ends up being a fantasy guy. I think you're right. I think he can be an 80 guy. Like, if Harry Mackay can be an 80 average guy, if Charlie Curnow can be an 80 average guy, he can be an 80 average guy as well. He's got the talent to be it. It's just that, like, do you go for someone like him, or do you go for someone who's going to have like that mid-forward status that can kind of push 100s one day, but will also lose his forward status one day? You know what I mean? Like, that's the decision you make at draft time, I guess. Now, it's Joel Frazier. Now, I got contacted by someone that had the surname Frazier, and he pronounces it Frazier. But I'm still waiting for Aaron Bryans to actually contact the media manager at Western Bulldogs to give me a definitive definition. Because this is the thing, right? When you watch the preseason games, they're like commentated by Western Bulldogs people, and then they're calling him like Frazier or like Frazier or like different names. Freya. Like, it's so like, but then you hear the mainstream commentators like Fox Footy, Channel 7, they call him Frazier, but it's like, if the people from inside Western Bulldogs were calling him that, then it's confusing.
That should be exactly.
Yeah. But so it's like, we need to have a confirmation, but we'll go with Frazier now. Because that's how the guy who contacted me liked his surname pronounced. But anyway, had 75 points. The inside midfield role looks nice, I guess, but I don't think it's going to last. But I'm not worried about that. I want him playing that cushy halfback role. I know he didn't score that well in it last week when he played it for a half, but I don't want him in the midfield role coming up against players like Nick Dacos and Scott Pendlebury and stuff like that for a 13, 14 gamer kid. I want him just sitting on the halfback getting cheap touches and keeping that defender status for the future. So I think when Bont and when Treloar do come back, he does get pushed out, but I think it's going to be a good thing. The player I'm actually concerned for is Sanders.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, he's a real good player and he's a nice player. And I just think even if he's off halfback, he's still going to score. And yeah, I agree with you on Sanders. Riley West actually had more CBAs than Sanders in this game. So you're thinking, there's injuries there at the Dogs. You think this is the time that Sanders should get some more mid-time.
Yeah.
And Riley West is ahead of him. Obviously, Frey's gone in there as well. But yeah, I mean, like, this is what Bevo did to those other Dogs. And now you look at them this week. I mean, we'll talk about them later. But they're absolutely putting up some numbers this week in the midfield.
I noticed you just said Freya.
Oh.
That's your Portuguese descent, though, the soft J, which is phonetically how it should be, in my opinion. But anyway, we'll look at the Collingwood point of view. Lockie Schultz, 106 points. We're just tipping the cap there, aren't we? We don't think there's anything going big there.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, 7 tackles, 2 goals there. Still side bottom, though, 84 points. 14 CBA, so he's just turned into a centre bounce midfielder again. Kicked 2 goals as well. Had some I think he had a howler earlier on in the game, but then fixed it up with some brilliant moments as well. Does this last, do you think?
This is a weird one. Like, it's sort of come from nowhere. Like, I picked him up on the waivers. I saw that 50% CBAs. I'm like, I'm going to, take that because if he's got the role, he's going to score.
Yeah.
Perryman had 0 CBAs.
Yeah,
so it's like, what's going on there? Like, they're paying him, they probably promised him inside mid-time, paying him $900K.
Yeah.
And then you've got Pendlebury and side bottom having 50% CBAs. I don't know whether this is a game-based situation.
Or just trying other things. But I'm not really sure who else they would have brought in.
McGuinness went down with an ACL.
Yeah.
And they had Long as the sub.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether they put Long on straight in the CBAs, put Perryman back to fill the McGuinness role.
Yeah.
But, even the week before, Perryman was down on CBAs. So it's real interesting on that. Like Perryman's come out and got 240s the last couple of weeks. So it's only really hurting him. But yeah, I think Sidebottom, I've picked him up, and if he's going to go at 80, I'm pretty happy.
I guess Jordan De Goey come back at the side, takes up a few. He only had the 6 CBAs though, didn't he? Yeah, 6 CBAs there. But then I guess, Ned Long is coming to do that gritty kind of grunt role, the tackler kind of almost not tagger, but it's a better role than Perryman's role. He's better at it than probably Perryman is. He's probably the one that's kind of hurt him the most, I think. So you might want to have a look at Long just for a 70 to 80 kind of average mid guy if you need like an M7.
As long as you're not sub, I think he's a good scorer.
Yeah, definitely. He just gets tackles. All right, let's move on to Essendon versus the Crows on the Saturday Arvo. Nick Bryan had 72 points. You're going to take that from him every day of the week. Elijah Sardis has come out with a broken hand. He was just kind of scored okay with his 71 points. To me, though, he still looked really lost out there, and his kicking wasn't great.
He's fumbly as well.
Yeah. He's just a bit, timid, scared, tentative. I don't really know.
Yes, that's a good word.
Yeah. And then, now he's got the broken hand. If Ben Hobbs is ever going to make it as an AFL midfielder, this is the time.
Yeah.
He has to. But I just hope it just means tighter rotations for my boys like Caldwell and Merritt and those. And Perkins maybe gets a bump as well.
Perkins actually done a little groin. So
has he really?
He's out this week as well.
Oh, okay.
But it's a 1 weeker. But Parrish is apparently going to play with VFL this week.
Okay, so he's close as well.
So you've got that to consider. So the Bombers have got, they've got Port this Thursday night, then they've got a bye.
Yep.
And then Parrish will probably be back then. What happens there with Sardis? What happens there with Perkins?
Yeah. Anyway, what I'm saying is Hobbs needs to score 150 this week to be relevant ever in the future, I think, with all those players coming back in and out of the side. On to the Crows. Ben Keys. I've got him in a Dynasty League, and he's like my F5, and he is pretty handy to have in like F5 position. 132 points, kicked 4 goals. But I do think if the Crows get better at bringing the ball inside 50, the midfield's more cohesive, he'll get better because there'll be more opportunities down there. He'll have more tackles inside 50, all that sort of stuff. Like, legit could be an 80 to 90 average forward, like if everything goes his way. And he might even get a few tagging roles in the midfield as well. He's not the worst option to have.
You see him go on these little runs. We even talked about it last year.
Yeah.
And Crows kick 161 points.
Yeah.
Like, someone's going to need to kick the goals.
Yeah.
So
I think they were we'll talk about Port after this, but a lot of the players were like 80 plus this week. Here we go. If you look at
I think there was 12 or 13.
Thilthorpe, Tex, and who's the other? Darcy Fogarty. All scored 80 plus in this game. All their key forwards scored 80 plus in this game. So, to be honest, I think this seems like a bit more about Essendon than anything. Because, and like both teams just, like Essendon scored 100 points as well. So, like, it wasn't a very defensive game at all. Thilthorpe was awesome, 91 points. And Rochelle as well was on a bit of a tear as well from his first games. I think he's averaging over 80 from his first 2. Had 4 goals. He was getting CBAs. And I swear last week I turned on the TV and saw him out on a wing as well. So I think he's getting pushed up.
Yeah, that's good.
Onto a midfield a bit more. So I don't know. And they're saying he's had the biggest preseason after. They're definitely going to say that after what happened at the end of last year anyway.
Yep,
but
agree.
I think he's going to lift this year as well. Josh Worrell was one I was loving in the intra-club games in preseason, and he's gone 80 plus both weeks, I think, as well. Took 8 marks this week, and I think that's just what he does. He intercepts across the half-back line, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. So
it's pretty good signs for like fantasy-wise for Crows.
Oh, definitely. I think with Worrell, Michael Laney's probably the more defensive guy and allows him to get off the chain a bit more.
Even like he scored 70 plus.
Yeah.
Like there's... Rankin got subbed and he was on 70.
Yeah.
And he was like on the lowest. When you look at the scores, he was like the lowest 5.
Yeah.
And that was a 70 and that was being subbed out. So
I think he was 70 from 50-something % time on ground as well, which is
not good for our super
very,
coach.
very annoying for us even in the classic formats, but whatever. And Wayne Miller, 78 points. I think he's building nicely. He just has to stay fit and he could go around that 80 mark as well.
Looks good, yeah.
But also, it's Crows versus Essendon. So let's see it when the Crows actually, this is me sounding salty here, let's see when the Crows actually come up against a good opposition. and see what the scoring is like.
They got North this week.
No, I don't have to worry about that for a while. It's a good run, I think. Port have a good run too, who are next on the list, Port versus Richmond. Preface this, and I don't mean to be mean to Richmond fans, but they were absolute witches' hats on the weekend. They're just a bunch of kids trying their best out there, really. 14 Port players scored 80 plus on the weekend. So, and one of those wasn't Jason Horne-Francis.
Yeah, I know.
Crazy. Jason Horne-Francis did play more forward this week.
Yes.
Only had a big decrease in CBAs. I think they'll give him Boak a bit more of a run in there and resting him a bit. But look, Logan Evans had 108 points. He plays the right role for fantasy. I'm pretty confident on him being a good scorer, aren't you?
Yeah, good bounce back as well. I think he got a pretty low one last week. So,
all the Port players did, though. We just got
yeah. So, I mean, we've been talking about in the preseason who's going to take that Houston role, and I think these guys are going to share it around, and we probably saw that in this game. So, Logan Evans, I think he'll push 75, 80, and 108 is unreal. Yeah,
and I think going to the future, he can be an 80 plus average guy from next 2-3 years onwards type thing. Could be a good scorer. Jackson Mead had 98 points. He was on the wing all day. Like the thing with him, and then Boak was on the inside role, but Butters comes back soon. It's got to push someone out of that midfield role. And a lot of the time last year, either Wines or Drew start on the wing and then come in as that either tag or defensive or that kind of inside midfielder. I reckon Mead might get pushed out eventually, but to start off the season, he's scoring okay. Playing on the wing against both the wings, Burgoyne had 120 as well. So everyone just carved up against Richmond, so we can't really take much out of it. Sam Powell-Pepper's the same, 90 points. I think you just stream him against weaker opposition because he'll get on the end of a few goals and lay a heap of tackles inside 50. Tip of the cap to Joe Richards for now, I think, the 85 points. There's a lot of Richmond factor about this. Actually, Boak was another one who got on the wing as well and scored 81 points. He was on the wing for quite a bit of the day as well. So, Richmond factor, it's real. Just stream against Richmond, I think, is the key takeaway from
what
that.
About Josh Sin?
I have 90 points. Yeah, I did have him in there. Didn't look terrible, but again, Richmond factor. So, yeah.
He actually had a couple good kicks through the middle and he didn't turn it over. I was like, that's unreal.
What about our boy Christian Moraes?
Yes.
That post-match interview. Such a nice moment.
Yeah, legend. I did notice, because obviously Luco went down, so Moraes came on. And I think Boak, like you said, he was on the wing, but I think he did a bit of forward as well. So, and, that's probably helped, Mead as well go inside with Moraes coming on. I think they're okay, let's give him a run on that wing against Richmond, and he scored 60. So, be interesting to see. We've got Luco go down, and Jones and Burton are going to miss this week as well. So they've got a hip and a groin.
Yeah.
So
probably makes Port better, to be honest.
So there might be a few little changes. I did notice Rioli actually had some CBAs.
Yes, he
early.
did too. Yeah. So,
so I don't know whether we're trying stuff whether that affected Hornet or. But yeah, there might be a few changes this week as well, just for those injuries.
There was a question later on from J Will 008. Is Horne-Francis off the too good for the podcast list? And he's up for discussion. Do you think he'll still be a top tier forward? I think he is. He's currently regretting picking him over McRae. He's going to be. It's just a slow start to the season, I feel. And he's getting used to a full-time midfield role as well, where he used to kind of spend a lot more time on the bench, I think, as well. So he's kind of trying to play in other spots. They did rest him up forward a lot more this week, which probably does hinder his scoring. But I think long-term, by the end of the season, I feel like the gap between McRae and Horne-Francis will close.
Yes.
So,
and the Hornets pre-season was unreal.
Yeah.
We saw two amazing games. I think it will come... It'll even out.
And in a keeper league as well, which you hope that you're talking about, you're taking that every day of the week, Horne-Francis, so it doesn't really matter. On the Richmond side of things, Camden McIntosh had 88 points. I think he had a bit of a drop in CBAs. I can't remember, but he was more inside last week. Let me just check the CBA numbers here. Yeah, he did have a 65% drop, so he must be come back out to the wing a bit more. But he's still scoring well in that midfield, just as a senior body, I guess.
Sort of around it, and
that's the thing. He does push in as another midfield, even if he is starting on the wing. And then Ryan Mansell had 86 points as a high half forward. I think he got injured though. He's got I don't know. It's hard when you're at the game with a 6-year-old jabbering the whole game. It's hard to really concentrate on what was going on. But yeah, Ryan Mansell looked all right, but I think he got injured late in the game. The rest of Richmond players were just absolute witches' hats though. So we'll just move on from that one. St Kilda versus Geelong. Did you see this coming in terms of the result?
I didn't. I tipped Geelong, obviously, in the tips, and I thought after their performance last against Freo, they would just win. But pretty good coaching from Ross, I think. There was bit of talk before what he was going to do, and they executed it. So
Yeah.
unreal.
Yeah, definitely. First one here is Marcus Windhager, 111 points, playing that tagging role. What do you think of him? Like, there was a question that's actually come in that's saying, this is from Liam, AFLW Fantasy. He's like, is this the dawn of a new Windhag era, or just a repeat of his start hot, get cold fast 2024? And Kays has chimed in saying Heff will never admit to it being Windhager's season. And no, I don't have anything against Windhager at all. I have something against saying Joel Frazier is a reach and Marcus Windhager isn't a reach.
Yes.
When they're taken when Windhager's taken before Joel Frazier, that's what I have issue with. But I don't have any issue with Marcus Windhager per se. My thing is like I do with all of these players, like when small forwards pop, when taggers pop, when key defenders pop, I'll look across the competition and go, all right, how many taggers put up these scores regularly? And, how many small forwards put up these scores regularly? And just law of averages and just, these kind of roles generally means they're not. And look, if Marcus Windhager comes out and puts up 500 plus scores in a row, I'll happily say it's Marcus Windhager's season. But when I see one score pop and things like that, I just go, well, what's usually happens in players of this role? I can't predict the future. I don't really know, but I'll just go with what's most likely to happen most of the time. And I probably wouldn't be betting on him being a huge scorer this season, but could be a handy contributor to a side, definitely.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, the thing with this game is he played 80% CBAs.
Yeah.
And he obviously did a role on Holmes. That was his role, but say he went to Bailey Smith, which they were talking about doing that in the pre-game, and then he was laid out, he probably wouldn't have had 80% CBAs. He would have been playing, Smith would have been more forward or more wing.
Yeah.
And yes, Windhager had a great game. He kicked a couple goals and got the other side of Holmes, which is unreal. That's what we want to see in a tagger.
Yeah.
But he's had 2 good games. I agree. I think he's probably worth a pickup in a keeper, and maybe you get him on this hot run. But I agree with the average. There's so many guys as well in the Saints midfield. It's hard to see him being even like a 90-plus guy. I can't really see that for Windhager.
Because last week, I think he had a huge bump in CBAs this week because he was tagging right. And then he played on the wing last week, and I can't remember who they played against the Crows. I can't remember.
I think he went to Dawson.
Yeah, that's right.
And then Dawson moved forward, and it was hard for him to go with him.
Yeah, and so it depends on the quality of the opposition as well. Holmes is probably not really a full-time midfielder. Probably at one it's easy to shut down. He did say in an interview, Windhager, though, that he is trying to work on not just focusing on the man and trying to get a few possessions himself, which is encouraging. It's just that when you're a tag, you probably should focus on the man a bit more, though, I think, as well. Like I said, I don't know. I can't predict the future, but I do think Windhager is definitely worth owning. It's just that I'm not sure you can expect 111 points each week. You're going to have a lot of low scores in there as a tagger, depending on who he goes to, that might drive that average down over the season, that's all.
And Saints have got Tigers this week.
Yeah, so it's going to be a huge score.
So, but also, who's he going to tag anyone? I don't know.
Yeah, does he go to Toronto, or do they bother tagging him and they just chuck him out in a halfback flank or something?
Yeah,
this week. So
it's role dependent.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good for the Jack McRae owners out there. If you got them this week, Richmond this week.
Better VC or see him.
I think. Although we have the lockout, but I've got Port playing Thursday, and I've got Caldwell. I can VC on the Thursday. I'm pretty happy with that. Anyway, Zach Jones had 111 points. He was on the wing for most of the night. I don't know. He only had the 2 CBAs. He does roll into the contest. He's not like he's a proper outside winger. He's the kind that kind of pushes in and finds himself around the footy. It's just another one I just wouldn't trust long term, just going on history. But it's good to see him playing again and playing full game minutes as well. Anthony Caminiti was the one with the noticeable role change and he had 83 points doing it, but he moved into defence and took 13 marks. So I think he's one to watch, I guess. I wouldn't expect it each week.
Do that again, but pretty good. And structurally, I know they had some changes at Saints, so...
Yeah, well, Josh Battle played that role and averaged 70 last year, so he might be able to do the same thing, so wait and see. And that could have actually happened last week. I just remembered I didn't watch that game at all last week, Saints last week at all, so I don't know. Anyways, Ted Closey, 91 points, came on for Stewart, but went forward. He was good, kicked 2 goals. 4 tackles, 6 marks. I think he's just someone you need to... Everyone's jumping on the waiver wire for him.
Yeah.
But I think that's something I'd probably want to see again before I go too crazy.
Yeah, it's just that, is he going to play sub again? Baz will come back in.
Yeah.
Is he just going to be out?
Stewart's only a 1-week injury apparently as well.
Yeah.
But so they've got to fit 2 people back into the side. Who's going out as well?
I wonder if because Duncan had a pretty good game in VFL. I wonder if he just comes in for Stewart.
Yeah, that could happen as well. Apparently Stewart's all right though.
Yeah.
So it might be a 1 weeker if anything. So yeah. Lawson Humphries, is he too good for the podcast already?
I think so. If he's going to go on at this 80s, then it's probably his backline at the moment.
Saints are one of the better opponents for defenders to score against, so it might be something in that. But he hasn't put a foot wrong at all this season, so maybe
I think he goes 80 plus definitely this year.
I think so. Maybe just give him 1 more week, but I'm pretty happy to tick that one off as too good for the podcast. Blitzard just played that wing ruck role that he plays. That one where he plays 2 midfield positions at once and doesn't rest, but he's a freak and can run all day. Mitch Nevitt got it done again with the tackles, 7 tackles. That pumps his score up. He got 80 on the weekend.
A bit more time on ground as well for Nevitt this week.
Sustainable that around that 80 mark, do you think?
Oh, maybe 70. I think you can go average 70.
Yeah.
I think for this year, just because I think they're using him and Jai Clark as that low time on ground, that role.
Yeah.
At the Cats. So I think 70.
And what are your thoughts on Sam de Koning's role after the second week of seeing it?
Yeah, so I watched the first quarter of this, and yeah, I mean, I was looking at his role, if there was any change from last week, and it was pretty much the same role. He had a little bit less CBAs, but I did notice that the commentator actually said that he wasn't wearing any shin guards.
Well, he did that last week as well, because Luke Jackson was like teasing him about it. He's like, "You crazy?
Yeah.
What are you doing? I'm going to kick in the shin."
Yeah,
Something.
and the commentators are like, "Is that he's not really jumping or going up for the hit outs?"
No.
So I'm wondering whether he's looking at trying to get these guys around the ground, because Marshall clearly,
100% he is,
beat him in the hit outs.
Yeah.
But he's still got 21 hit outs. But I looked at the ruck contest because did he have less time? Obviously they're using blitz subs and Neil as well.
Yeah.
He had 5 more ruck contests this week. But obviously the scoring there he didn't do as much around the ground as he did last week. And now obviously they smashed Freo. He kicked a goal. There was a few more +6. He did a few more +6s.
Yeah.
Obviously Marshall beat him, but I'm just wondering what they're doing. Maybe he's not actually trying to win the ruck battle. They're happy for him to just do it around the ground.
Yeah, that's 100% what it is. He's like an extra midfielder. They're not expecting him to actually win the rucks. I think the question comes is when do they want to start winning the first hit out to advantage? And Reece Stanley is a guy. He's terrible, but he can do that a lot better than he can. Also, if Stewart's injured, who goes back in defence? Is it de Koning?
Yeah.
There's a few bits and pieces like that. I reckon they'll roll with it. I know.
So do I.
Yeah, Chris got some stubbornness. He'll persist with it. Yes, it slipped up on the weekend, but when I look at the loss, I don't think it's won and lost in the ruck, really. They're still in the game. Geelong for most of the game as well. Definitely came back late. So I don't think that's the reason why things went awry. And I think there's some advantage to playing a guy like de Koning around the ground and kind of making those rucks, especially the more lumbersome guys, a bit more accountable in terms of winning the footy around the ground and stuff like that as well. So I think it keeps going for a little bit, but yeah, we might just see the scoring fluctuate a bit depending on how many of those possessions you can pick up.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm an owner actually, and you got 72, but for me it's handy as a defender. I'm pretty happy. If you can go between 70 and 120 like you did the week before, that's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think you get more out of him in that role than you do from Reece Stanley winning hitouts, which doesn't really happen that much anyway. So, yeah, anyway. We'll move on to the Brisbane versus West Coast game. West Coast are like Richmond as well. Not a lot of Brisbane scorers excited me just because it was West Coast factor. Darcy Wilmot had the 91 points, and he looks like the second in charge kind of guy in defence these days behind Zorko. But you've got Kitty Coleman to return, and I think Kitty Coleman's going to play the more unaccountable defender, plays it way better than Wilmot does. So I'm just waiting to see what it looks like with those two in the side with Zorko as well. Maybe I'll like it a bit more next year if Zorko retires. But I'm still a bit tentative on Wilmot at this point in time.
That's fair. I think, I think we probably talked about it. Wilmot, I still think he's probably a 75, 80. He's probably that still solid D5.
Yeah.
Even with Kitty coming back.
Yeah. Nah. And then Jasper Fletcher, 85 points. I still maintain, I know he had a low score last week, but I still maintain I think he'll be one of the better wings in the competition one day.
One thing I noticed with him actually he played a bit more half back.
Yeah, he did go back a bit. Yeah.
So they had Levi and Berry on the wings. Now, I know Berry, I think there's been talk that he was at halfback, so I don't know whether they switched this game. But Jasper had 3 kickouts, and I don't know, it was just
he took quite a few marks in the back lines as well. So, yeah, I did notice that.
Fagan said, we can use him wing, we can use him potentially half back. He could even be an inside mid one day, is what he said.
He's that good. Like from his underage stuff, though. That's what I saw him as inside mid. Like I could see him playing that role. Yeah. No, I like Jasper Fletcher. Got roasted for saying I wanted him over Curtin in my team, but I think it's going to be justified again. Onto the West Coast sort of things. I always said Richmond side of things. That's how bad I'm going. Liam Baker had 92 points. Had a lot of midfield time, but this is what I hated at Richmond because they just never settled him into a role. We're second week into his life at West Coast, and he's still been, half back all last week, full-time midfield this week. Scored 92 points, and he looked really good, like got a stack of possessions, and worked so hard. Like he was absolutely cooked on the bench in this game as well. But yeah, I just don't love the frequent role changes, don't you think?
Yeah. I mean, you probably want him off half-back, right, at West Coast.
That's where you
even
want
though he did score, but...
Yeah. He definitely got into the game more in the midfield. Like I did notice in last week and also the preseason games, he did struggle to get into the games off the half-back line. Maybe they're just trying to get the footy in his hands, and because they played pretty well this week as well. Like they almost didn't lose.
Hot,
yeah. So maybe that's just why it is. But hopefully, as West Coast get better, he kind of settles into that half-back role. Tyrell Dewar played on the wing and a very attacking wing on the weekend as well. Kicked 2 goals from that position. So 89 points. Don't love wingers, but you're probably going to score more than you do at forward. So it's probably one to think about.
I feel like it could be a tip of the cap.
Yeah, I think so too. And Clay Hall's the other one I had here. Had bulk CBAs, but only the 49 points. But I think that's just encouraging for a youngster to be thrown straight into the midfield in his first game back for the season, I think. Onto North Melbourne versus Melbourne. Mentioned this before about Paul Curtis, 110 points. But yeah, I look at small forwards around the competition and they don't tend to go that well. So he's probably not one I'm looking at right now off the waivers, even though there's a lot of talk about him in the Discord today and yesterday. Kind of similar, but Cam Zerha plays a bit taller than Paul Curtis, really. He had 84 points. It kind of was the opposite of last week, though. He kicked goals but scored worse. I think last week he had 1 goal, 4, and didn't score as well. So, I don't know. Do you think Zerha can improve this season to be a fieldable option?
I think he does. Like he's got a pretty good floor. Even like last year, I feel like his worst games are not that low. So I feel like you can actually field him with some confidence this year. And North won by like 60 points. So they're improving. So like if he can get a goal or 2, I think you can be more safer with him this year on field.
Yeah.
Zerha. And obviously Curtis is there as well, but. Yeah, I think he can do it.
I get Toby Green vibes from him and can be like a 70 to 80 kind of guy, I think. There was a few seasons ago, they'll chuck him in the midfield as well. Like they won't do that again, but it's obviously what I'm trying to say is that's the kind of caliber of player he can be. Like he's good enough to do that. But I think as North improve, he's one of the players that improve just because he gets more looks at it and more opportunity. So yeah. And then Charlie Comben had 82 points. Like don't rely on a score like that, but he marked everything in this game. Like looked
real
awesome.
Good, yeah. So, intercepts. First came back too. That's what they need as well.
He was one of our Supercoach favourites last year.
Yeah.
Because he was cheap and took heaps of marks.
And he was forward.
Yeah. Kay Chandler moving on to Melbourne. He spent a fair bit of time in the midfield as well. Kicked 3 goals.
What happened? Yeah.
Yeah. 117 points there. Just had a bit of a day out for him, even side that went down by 10 goals. But yeah, Trent Rivers just not getting that midfield time at all, like people expected. And they do kind of roll with the tight 3 in there. But it's pretty crazy. So Kay Chandler had plus 23 CBAs on last week, so he had 0 CBAs last week, had 7 this week. But yeah, if you look at Petrarca playing forward more, and then Trent Rivers back in defence more this week, so it kind of paved the way for
Chandler.
Yeah, for Chandler to score a bit better in there. So one to watch on the roll. I don't know. I don't think Melbourne's the outcome of this game probably wasn't what they wanted to happen, so it might not persist. But
I think maybe they should try some stuff at half time.
True.
They move track forward because I know he was midfield for the first half.
Yeah.
So, potentially they changed it and, he just had a good day, kicked a couple goals as well. So
yeah. Jake Bowie's in line for Too Good for the Podcast, 93 points. He's got the kick-ins. He's the main distributor out of defence. I don't know. It's just there's a lot of players to come back into that defensive line. We haven't seen him play with Stephen May yet, so that'll take all the kick-ins kind of off of him. And then my man Judd McVie has got to come back in the side.
He wouldn't be far off, I don't think.
2 weeks away.
Yeah. And Windsor's out at the moment with a foot.
Yeah.
This week. So
yeah,
he was down there. So Yeah, I think Stephen May would be the big one with the kick-ins.
Yeah, I think it kind of takes a few points away from him there, but he's looking classy, so and just got to hope he stays fit as well. And then, speaking of classy, Xavier Lindsay still put up the 80 points this week. Looks classy on the wing. See the top averaging draftee so far?
Yep.
Yeah.
Him and then Levi next.
We all had him 5th in our ranks.
I know.
And,
I took Langford pick 3, and I'm like, now I'm like, I should have a Lindsay. But I think like Langford will still be good. He'll come good.
Long term, I think long term they'll even out, I think. And on to the final game of the round, Freo versus Sydney. This was a bit of a shit show from Fremantle. Did you see Brennan Cox's effort at the
against
end there?
Marty? Yeah, I know. That's
Awful. Josh Tracy, 91 points on the back 4 goals. Just good to see him firing again after a quiet week last week against Geelong. I really like him as a key forward type, kind of similar to the Thilthorpe kind of mould and kind of similar to the Day kind of mould as well. Darcy kind of mould, sorry. Is because he's a very good contested mark. Like he'll get a few looks at goal each week, and that could be enough for an 80 every few weeks type thing. So I'm happy with that one.
Definitely, you showed it last year as well. Like you went up 75.
I think pretty close to 80.
And and if he's on a run, you could be pretty confident just put him straight on field.
Just need Freo to stop being so shit, and he'll score more because they should be getting way more ball to him. Midfielder Brayshaw and Sarong just went absolutely missing. It was like they were scared of them getting tagged, so they just didn't play him in the midfield.
Yeah,
like it was weird.
Brayshaw was down on CBAs. I don't know what's gone, and they
playing him forward. Like Sarong too was like leading out from the goal square just to avoid James Jordan.
They're playing like Johnson and O'Driscoll and stuff inside. Which
Jaeger Mira's the next one. I got on the list here. 87 points doing tagging job. Like I know that's a tagging role, but it's still taking up midfield time for the other two. And he scored 87 from 32 disposals, just being led to the footy. But like that doesn't help you win,
No,
Like,
it seems to like Freo have like one of the best midfields in the comp, and they're starting to push these guys out. I don't know what's going on.
I think Longmuir is probably not far from the chopping block. I think knowing that his contract situation, that sort of stuff.
Wasn't even like Erasmus in there as well inside?
Yeah, I don't think he had as much, but like I do think they trialled him a little bit. I can pull up the CBAs here for Fremantle.
Yeah, I think if you're a Brayshaw owner, aren't you?
Yeah. I'm annoyed. Well, he looked good last week, but then just went missing. Erasmus had 4 CBAs, but yeah, like Johnson only had 4 after having heaps last week. Like it's just so weird that they've gone away from their kind of main mix. Like the biggest beneficiary was Jago and Mira. Caleb Sarong was in there a bit more this week, but they still pushed him forward at times. I guess you got to bring Bolton back into the side as well. They gave Patrick Voss a run in there, Bailey Banfield a run in there. Like it's nuts. Like so
they should just stick to their guns,
Yeah, I know. They just need to put their best 3 in there and let them kind of deal it out. And who cares if they get tagged? Just let them work through it. They're not going to get better at it if they don't. But anyway, enough real football chatter. Let's get back to some guys who average under 80. But no, this guy's not averaging under 80. Jake Lloyd. God, I feel bad about dropping this guy from my team. I had to do it. But
it was him or Bergman, wasn't it?
It was him or Bergman. But then in hindsight, like I wanted to keep extra midfielders. So like I kept D'Ambrosio and Burgoyne, but they were under 50s for me, like pretty reasonable under 50s when you compared to everyone else's. So it really became between him, Warple, and Bergman. I kept, and because I didn't want to keep an extra midfielder, I could only keep one of Bergman and Lloyd, and I wanted to keep the younger guy. He's going to be in my team longer,
which is fair.
Yeah, and he's still playing on the wing. He's still playing that role that we don't like as much for him.
I feel like Optus Oval are big grounds, always wingers. It's like that in the G. They always score well because of the big ground. Yeah,
true. Except, last week D'Ambrosio put up like 40 for me. But anyway, this week he went all right. Matt Roberts for Sydney as well, 95 points. I think he's too good for the podcast if he wasn't already.
Yeah.
Riley Bice, only the 64 points, but I'm liking the role. I reckon if he can just maintain it for a bit, he can build from there. She's goal
ball
as well. Bice ball.
That's what they're saying on socials.
Bice ball.
Yeah, big last quarter. Unreal goal. I think he had like 30-point last quarter. But he just looks like when he's got the ball, he looks good, and you can trust. He's not. You look like he's not going to stuff it up, if that makes sense.
He does a few thirsty acts as well. Like he'll give off a kick and then push like over the top for the next one,
get a +6
and really like scream for it and stuff like that. So it's the stuff that you like. They've just got to start using him a bit more. And then just a bit of a watch on this week. Like Brody Grundy came off injured late. I think he was okay. He was just like sore. But then Laddams, if they do rest him, whatever, Laddams is listed as a forward. So maybe just look at him as a streamer. If they do use him in the draft leagues, you could pick him up. Like he'd be on every waiver wire if he's not handcuffed to Grundy. And if they do rest him at some stage, he could be a handy scorer for that 1 week that he's in. So just have a think about that one. All right, let's get on to the listener questions. I think we've answered most of these in the show. Liam wants to know, is Cam Zerha going to be able to sustain this scoring, particularly his 0.8 point per minute numbers?
That's pretty awesome. Isn't
Yeah,
it?
that is. I don't know if it's going to be super sustainable just because he had like that 100 plus last week. But I reckon he can go between 70 and 80 this year. And you're fielding that at like F3, F4 every day of the week in this climate with no forwards. So, yeah, I think he's a definite starter this year at the very least. At the Draft Bible wants to know, what do you see Sean Manor scoring when he returns? Had a strong finish to last year.
I know you're a big Manor man. You took him pretty early in a draft.
In a dynasty draft, yeah. Well, it was really late, really, when you think about all the keepers in it. But
and I remember you saying we were at the Lighthouse, and you're like, I'm next pick. Like I'm looking at, I need a forward.
He's the only good forward in the draft.
And you're like, I'm going to take him. And there were people in there saying it was a bit early, but you're pretty hot on him, like in his scoring.
I think he can just so this is a dynasty league, so this is like 30 players on each team kind of kept. And Sean Manor, I was basically picking up with like my 32nd pick type thing. So it's more that I think he can be a 70 to 80 forward. And that's where I see him. If that answers your question, I think he's a 70 to 80 forward. And when you're playing that for me, he's kind of like the toss up between playing like Ben Keys or him type thing. I think that's pretty handy for depth in a side. So yeah. So like that's
Keys at the moment with the form.
Yeah, 100%. But like I've got him on the bench waiting to go if any of them doesn't do well, or just through the buys and stuff like that. It's pretty handy to have. So I think he's a 70 to 80 kind of guy, and that's where I see him at. Cellar Dwellers wants to know, Peatling, what are you thinking after 2 games? Is it too early to move on?
Yeah, it's a bit worrying, isn't it, just with the CBA mix? But I was going through all the champion data player positions today, and he is listed as the mid forward. So he'll probably, if he keeps this, he'll probably sneak forward status. So that could be, I think, that could be handy, like, with getting that status. So could he improve his scoring? I think I'm not sure he went in it last week, but if he can try and get to 70 and be a forward, I think you want to keep him.
Yeah.
If he's going to be mid only, then potentially. But I think I'll just hold him for now, just to, I mean the Crows mix is pretty deep at the moment.
And just looking at it, they're not really rotating much either here. Like it's been like between this week and last week was pretty much identical, with Matt Crouch probably seeing the biggest decrease in CBAs, but like, Draper when he came on, Rochelle had a few, but then like Peatling, Dawson, Saligo, they're all kind of like ranking, obviously. Those 3 there are pretty tight in the midfield mix, So like it rolls pretty deep, and I think we'll probably see a full game out of Draper this week.
Soon,
which could really, really hamper, I think.
We saw that in the preseason. As soon as he came on, or he probably is doing that now. As soon as he comes on from Peatling, just is out of there.
Yeah, I think that's going to really hinder Peatling. So I'm like, you don't drop him or anything like that. Like, maybe in a single season draft league, if there's something better on the waiver wire, then maybe think about it. But yeah, he could get forward status if the data's correct. Then that could be pretty handy. If he's
and
got
then you probably bank maybe an injury or something changing with forward status or
exactly.
something.
Could get a bit more of a go in there. He also wants to know, Rayner, is he back to a streamer? Could both move both for hot waivers, so he could put both of these guys to the waivers.
I think we had chatted about Rayner, was it pre-season or even last year? I don't know. Like maybe he can actually be a decent scorer. Like is he going to actually?
He's had 2 pretty dud scores though, hasn't he? So I just don't know if he's ever going to be consistent enough. Like I thought he would go next level this year. Then by next level, I mean next level for Rayner and average 70.
Fieldable.
Yeah, but that midfield just got deeper, and I thought like he'd just be full-time forward, warm into it, kicking 2 or 3 goals a week, and be a bit of a gun there. But like I only had the 4 CBAs last week, and I think he only had 4 the week before, so he's being used so minimal. And I guess the 2 games have been pretty tight for Brisbane as well. Like they haven't kicked away just yet. I think and it could just be to do with Brisbane like starting their preseason later, and the Premiers tend to get off to a slow start. Like I'd probably persist with both of them if I could, because I think once Brisbane start smashing teams, which they should, they'll start scoring. Those guys will, Rain will start scoring a lot better. And then Peatling, hold for the forward status. Hopefully he gets it, and then go from there, I reckon. At 0CHXZ wants to know top 3 forwards pick up this week. Also, quick flag, Jack Ross is listed as a medium forward by Champion Data. could be a chance of DPP. You put together a bit of a list of players that are indicating they're a different role in the champion data. From the different champion data kind of positions that are on the player profiles. Do you want to go through some of those?
Yeah, so Travis Boak was a mid forward. We talked about him on a wing but he had a bit more forward. I think Moraes coming on there helped that. Peatling, as we said. Nick Martin, mid forward at the moment. So that's probably a big one if you continue it. Chad Warner as well. Did have a bit more CBA time this weekend, but had a big score. But the first couple was more forward. Will Phillips, mid forward. Stephen Cornelio forward. Levi Ashcroft forward. Murphy Reed forward. Layla forward, so they're the rookies. Jack Ross forward, which we talked about.
Yeah.
There's a couple of other ones in there. Will Ashcroft and Sam Walsh. Now, this is off 2 games of data, so I feel like, usually when you see these guys, they get close, but they don't ever tick over.
Yeah. I'm just looking at a few here. So I've got my waiver kind of spreadsheet open. Looking at guys that are under 50% owned, like Kay Chandler, I think, if you're looking at under 50%, people that are likely to be available on waivers, Kay Chandler would be available in every league. So he's had a few CBAs in a good round, but I just don't trust it long term. I like Sam Powell-Pepper as a pickup. He's under 50% owned as well, because Port having a pretty nice run over the next month as well. And he's just I owned him a couple of years ago. He just pops up every probably third week for a 70 or 80. So he can score pretty well. And just trying to pick another one.
I feel like you got Rioli. He had CBAs and he got 78. Whether that will come to fruition. But I'm looking at him to maybe stream this week because we've got a Thursday night game.
Another one here is Ryan Marich. I probably should have mentioned this in the West Coast stuff, but he had kick-ins. He was playing in defence and kicking out from fullback and had 74 points on the weekend as well. He's listed as a forward too, so he might be one to look at. But yeah, if you do look at the kind of list from under 50% owned onwards, it is pretty gross. Like, there's not a lot there. But yeah, maybe have a look at some of those guys. Have a look at Chandler, Powell-Pepper, or Marich, or would you say Rioli as well? Or maybe some of the guys that were on that list before who've
they're probably over 80 guys, but just one's potential role changes.
Yeah. Anyways, we might wrap it up there for another week. Thank you, Geordie, for coming on the show this week.
No worries.
Get around us on, what's your socials? Where should people find you?
Just Jordan DeSanta on
Everything.
X. You're right.
Instagram.
On everything.
Yeah.
Spotify, everything,
Yeah, and I'm at Keeper League Pod on everything. So yeah, if you want to check us out there, help us grow that YouTube channel, click the link in the description below, sign up there. You pretty much just click it and press yes and you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. That would help us heaps. Also, if you want to sign up as a member and support the podcast, there's a link in the description below as well. Anyways, that'll do us for another week. We'll be back next week to recap round 3. Take it easy.